from the heart of the storm. I survived. From the jaws of a beast larger than my ship, I fought and won. And at last, before me lay the treasure I had long sought, shining brighter than hope itself. But beware, every treasure hides a secret. Join Sinbad's sixth voyage. After every voyage, I swore to myself, Sinbad, no more seas, no more storms. I had gold, I had peace, I had comfort in Baghdad. But the sea always called me back. This time, my heart longed for greater trade, and I gathered companions once more. At first, the journey was calm, the skies bright, and laughter filled our sails. We thought fortune smiled upon us. Yet the ocean is a fickle friend. Dark winds rose from nowhere, waves towering like mountains. Our ship groaned as if the sea itself wanted to tear it apart. We were cast ashore upon an island, mysterious, green, alive with strange sounds. At first we rejoiced, thinking ourselves saved. But soon, we realized fate had led us not to safety, but into the jaws of peril greater than the storm itself. After his fifth voyage, Sinbad swore never again to tempt fate. He had gathered enough wealth to live in comfort, enough stories to fill a lifetime. Yet a sailor's heart is never truly at rest. The whisper of the waves, the smell of salt in the wind, the cry of gulls circling the harbor, all these were siren calls that gnawed at his soul. Day by day, the longing grew. When he strolled through the bustling port of Baghdad, he would stop and gaze at the ships rocking gently in the water, their sails eager to embrace the horizon. Merchants spoke of distant lands, of treasures buried in the sands of forgotten kingdoms, of spices and silks worth fortunes. One morning, as the dawn lit the sky in hues of gold, Sinbad's resolve shattered. He saw a mighty vessel, its deck brimming with sailors preparing to depart. His heart thundered in his chest. The old hunger stirred. One last journey, he whispered to himself, though in truth, he knew he could never resist the sea's embrace. Ignoring the pleas of his friends, who warned him that fortune rarely favors a man twice, Sinbad purchased provisions, gathered his belongings, and boarded the ship. The sails unfurled, the ropes tightened, and once more, Sinbad surrendered himself to the boundless deep. But this voyage would not only test him with storms and monsters. No, this time, betrayal would strike at the heart of his journey. For weeks the voyage seemed blessed. The winds were steady, the seas calm, and the sailors sang as the ship cut through rolling waves. Sinbad told himself perhaps this journey would be merciful, perhaps fate would finally spare him its cruelty. But the sea is a fickle companion. One night, when the moon was a pale silver coin in the sky, the wind began to howl. The sails snapped like the wings of furious birds, and black clouds devoured the heavens. Thunder rolled across the ocean like the march of angry giants. Lightning carved jagged scars of fire above them. The captain shouted orders, but the storm roared louder than any man. Waves rose like walls, crashing over the deck and sweeping men into the depths. Sinbad clung to the mast, his knuckles white, his soul trembling. He had seen tempests before, but never one so savage, so relentless. "Pray to God," the sailors cried. "Pray, for only He can save us." The storm raged for 3 nights, tearing sails, snapping masts, and splitting the vessel's timbers. At dawn on the 4th day, the ship gave its final groan. With a sound like a beast breaking its chains, It shattered against a hidden reef. Sinbad was hurled into the sea. The salt burned his eyes. The waves dragged him under, but he fought like a man possessed. Piece by piece, the crew vanished into the deep. Only Sinbad clung to a plank of wood, tossed like a leaf upon the raging current. Hours passed. Exhaustion gnawed at his limbs. Just as he thought the sea would claim him, he felt sand beneath his feet. With the last of his strength, he crawled ashore, collapsing on the beach of a strange, uncharted island. And as his eyes closed, he wondered, was this salvation, or the beginning of yet another curse? When Sinbad awoke, the storm was gone, leaving only the hiss of waves and the cries of seabirds. His body ached, his lips were parched, and the sun above was merciless. Yet he gave thanks to God, for he was alive while so many of his companions had been swallowed by the sea. He rose and looked about him. The island stretched vast and wild, a land clothed in thick jungles and crowned with jagged mountains. Strange trees, their trunks twisted like coiled serpents, leaned over the shore. Exotic birds with feathers like jewels darted above, their calls both beautiful and unsettling. But what struck Sinbad most was the silence between the sounds. It was the hush of a land unwelcoming to men. He wandered inland, seeking fresh water. The forest air was heavy with the perfume of unseen flowers, yet beneath it lingered another scent, something musky, something predatory. Each rustle in the undergrowth made his heart tighten. At last, he stumbled upon a stream, its waters sparkling as though scattered with diamonds. He fell to his knees, drinking deeply until his strength returned. As he washed his face, his reflection wavered in the water, and behind it, for the briefest of moments, he thought he saw a shadow move. He turned. Nothing. Only trees swaying. Sinbad pressed on, climbing a ridge to gain his bearings. From its crest, the sight before him froze his blood. Across a wide valley stood a colossal figure, a man-shaped giant of stone and flesh, its single eye glowing faintly in the dusk. It stood still, like a mountain waiting to wake. Sinbad's heart thundered. He had escaped the fury of the sea, only to stumble upon a land of nightmares. And somewhere deep within, he knew, this was no ordinary island. Sinbad crouched low upon the ridge, hardly daring to breathe. The figure across the valley loomed higher than any palace tower he had ever seen. Its body seemed sculpted from the earth itself, its chest rising and falling in a rhythm far too slow for any man. At first, he prayed it was a trick of his weary eyes. But then, it moved. The great head turned, and the single eye, vast, glowing like a furnace, opened fully. Its gaze swept across the valley like a burning torch, piercing the forest canopy, sending flocks of birds screaming into the sky. Trees shook as though a storm had passed over them, though no wind stirred. Sinbad's heart pounded in his ears. He had heard tales of giants from the lips of sailors, one-eyed demons that feasted on men, guardians of cursed islands. He had dismissed them as the drunken ramblings of old mariners. Now, he knew the truth. The legends had been warnings. The giant shifted, and with each step the ground trembled. Rocks slid from the hillsides, and beasts fled shrieking from the underbrush. It raised its head to the heavens and let out a bellow that shattered the silence, a sound of hunger, of dominion, of ancient power. Sinbad pressed himself flat to the earth, whispering a prayer for deliverance. Yet even in his fear, the fire of adventure burned in his chest. "If I escape this land alive," he swore under his breath, "this tale will be told across the world." The eye turned again, and fixed directly upon the ridge where Sinbad lay hidden. A shadow fell across him. The ground shook. The giant was coming. The earth thundered beneath Sinbad's feet as he sprang from his hiding place. The giant's roar followed him, rolling across the valley like a storm. He darted through the forest, branches slashing at his face, roots clawing at his ankles. Every step he took, the monster took one, and the distance closed swiftly. Behind him, trees cracked like twigs beneath the giant's stride. A colossal hand, broad as a ship's sail, swept through the canopy, ripping trees from the soil. Splinters whirled past Sinbad like arrows. His lungs burned, his legs screamed, but fear pushed him faster. He burst into a clearing, the sun glaring down upon a wide marsh. The giant crashed after him, its one blazing eye fixed upon its prey. It bellowed again, and the stench of its breath rolled like rot across the field. Sinbad stumbled but did not fall. He leapt over pools of stagnant water, his mind racing. "I cannot outrun him," he thought, "but perhaps I can outwit him." Spying a narrow gorge at the marsh's edge, Sinbad hurled himself toward it. The crevice was too small for the creature's bulk, but Sinbad hoped it would buy him precious moments. He slid between the rocks just as the giant's hand slammed down, shaking the ground with such force that dust rained from the cliffs. From the shadows of the gorge, Sinbad watched as the monster prowled, its eye glowing with fury. It clawed at the rocks, gouging deep furrows, seeking to drag him out. Sinbad pressed deeper into the narrow passage, his breath ragged, his heart wild. For now, the stone walls sheltered him. But he knew he could not hide forever. The giant's voice rumbled like thunder, a vow of hunger and vengeance. The hunt had only begun. Sinbad pressed forward through the narrow gorge, the giant's growls fading behind him. The air grew cooler, damp with the scent of stone and moss. Soon the passage widened into a cavern, dimly lit by shafts of sunlight slipping through cracks above. He paused, chest heaving, his ears straining for any sign of pursuit. The giant's roars still echoed in the distance, but the beast seemed unable to squeeze its massive bulk into the crevice. Relief washed over him, yet only for a moment. The cavern was not silent. From the darkness came a low hiss, like steam escaping from a kettle. Then another sound, something heavy scraping across stone. Sinbad's hand went instinctively to the dagger at his belt. His eyes adjusted to the gloom, and his breath caught. The cavern walls glittered faintly with veins of crystal, but what drew his gaze was the shape coiled in the shadows. Scales shimmered faintly, green and gold, as vast as the mast of a ship. A great serpent lay curled around a mound of bones and shattered armor. Its eyes, twin embers of cold fire, opened slowly, fixing upon the intruder. Sinbad froze. The giant outside had been a terror, but this was death itself, ancient and patient. The serpent uncoiled with fluid grace, its body sliding over the stones, scales rasping like sand across a drum. The hiss grew louder, vibrating through the cavern walls. Sinbad's mind raced. He could not outrun this creature in such tight quarters. He tightened his grip on his dagger, though it felt like a child's toy against such a beast. And then he saw it, half buried among the bones at the serpent's coils. A jeweled sword, its hilt gleaming with rubies, untouched by rust or time. The serpent shifted, its head lowering, tongue flickering. Sinbad knew the beast was guarding it. If he wanted a chance at survival, he would have to claim that blade. The cavern trembled as the serpent slid closer, its body weaving like a river of scales. Each movement rattled the bones underfoot. Sinbad backed against the wall, the dagger feeling useless in his hand. The jeweled sword gleamed in the shadows, its rubies catching the faint light like drops of blood. The beast struck. A blur of scales and fangs lunged forward, the hiss rising into a shriek. Sinbad dove to the side, rolling across jagged stone, the serpent's head slamming against the cavern wall with a thunderous crack. Shards of rock splintered and fell like hail. Heart pounding, Sinbad sprang to his feet and darted toward the mound of bones. The serpent recoiled, its massive body snapping in a whip-like arc that nearly crushed him against the cavern floor. Dust and bone fragments filled the air. "By Allah, grant me strength!" Sinbad cried, flinging himself across the pile. His fingers closed around the jeweled hilt. It was heavier than any weapon he had wielded, but when he raised it, a strange hum filled the cavern, as though the blade itself recognized its purpose. The serpent roared, its mouth opening wide, fangs dripping with venom that smoked when it touched the stone. With a surge of courage, Sinbad swung the blade. A brilliant flash tore through the gloom as steel met scale. The serpent recoiled with a scream that shook the very earth, dark ichor spraying across the cavern. But the beast was not slain. Its coils lashed with fury, smashing stalactites from the ceiling, one after another, like thunderbolts. Sinbad was tossed against the rocks, his arm throbbing, but he did not release the sword. The serpent lunged again, faster than before. Sinbad braced himself, teeth gritted, and thrust the glowing blade straight into its gaping maw. A scream, piercing, ancient, filled with rage and pain, echoed through the cavern as the beast writhed, its body twisting like a storm. The ground shook as if the earth itself would split open. Sinbad held tight, praying tea. The cavern trembled as though the heavens themselves had split apart. Sinbad's jeweled blade, driven deep into the serpent's throat, blazed with a light so fierce that even the shadows recoiled. The beast thrashed in agony, its coils hammering the walls, splintering rock, sending torrents of dust and stone cascading down. Sinbad clung to the hilt, every muscle straining, his body battered and bleeding. The serpent reared back, its massive maw spewing venom that hissed and burned wherever it landed. Yet the blade would not be shaken loose. It pulsed brighter with each heartbeat, feeding on Sinbad's courage. At last, with a shudder that seemed to drain the world of sound, the serpent let out one final, thunderous cry. Its body convulsed violently, then collapsed in a cascade of scales and shattered stone. The cavern fell silent, save for the crackle of venom burning through the rock. Sinbad staggered to his feet, chest heaving, the blade slick with black blood. He had slain the guardian, yet as the serpent's body dissolved into mist, the cavern itself seemed to stir. Bones shifted, rocks groaned, and a hidden wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage leading deeper into the heart of the island. The air was thick with mystery and the faint scent of salt and ancient stone. Strange glyphs adorned the walls, glowing softly like the pulse of some long-forgotten magic. Sinbad ran his fingers over them, feeling a vibration beneath his hand, a heartbeat of the earth itself. Could this be a trap? Or the doorway to untold treasure? The faint glimmer of gold shimmered from the passage's darkness. Sinbad's heart raced. Somewhere ahead lay the promise of reward, the kind whispered of in sailors' tales. But danger lingered in every shadow, and every step forward could decide whether he would walk away rich, or never walk away at all. Steeling himself, Sinbad whispered a prayer to God and stepped into the passage. Ahead, destiny waited, twisting with peril and promise alike. Sinbad stepped cautiously into the narrow passage, the glow from the jeweled blade casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. The air was thick, scented with salt and something older, dust and magic intertwined. Every footstep echoed like a drumbeat in the cavern, as if the island itself were awake and watching. The passage twisted and narrowed, then opened suddenly into a vast underground gallery. Sunlight had never touched this place. It was illuminated only by faintly glowing crystals embedded in the walls and ceiling, refracting light like 1,000 tiny stars. Sinbad's eyes widened. Strewn across the floor were artifacts of gold, silver, and precious stones, some buried beneath layers of sand, others piled in intricate patterns, as if laid out for a king long forgotten. But the air held a warning. Among the glittering treasure, Sinbad noticed subtle traps, thin wires strung across hidden pits, pressure plates disguised as stone tiles, and shards of broken mirrors that could slice a hand or foot. The island had guarded its secrets well, rewarding only the clever and brave. Sinbad took a deep breath and began to move carefully. Step by step, he navigated the maze of treasures, picking his path as he went, relying on his instincts sharpened from years at sea. His fingers brushed coins and gems, yet he did not linger. Every second could bring disaster. Then, from the far end of the gallery, a low rumble echoed. Dust fell from the ceiling. Sinbad froze. Something massive stirred deeper within the chamber. He could not yet see it, but he knew instinctively the island had another guardian waiting. He gripped his jeweled sword tighter. His heart pounded with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Ahead lay either unimaginable treasure or the ultimate trap. Sinbad whispered a prayer, and with a surge of courage, he stepped forward, deeper into the island's secret heart. Sinbad's footsteps echoed through the hidden gallery, each one a cautious beat in the silence. The glow of the jeweled blade lit the walls, revealing towering stacks of gold coins, delicate goblets encrusted with jewels, and tapestries that seemed to shimmer with ancient magic. Every step brought wonder and dread. Then, a tremor ran through the floor. Dust fell from the vaulted ceiling. Sinbad froze, heart pounding. From the far end of the chamber, a low, guttural growl resonated, vibrating through the walls. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and the air grew thick with heat. Before him emerged the guardian, a massive creature, half lion, half serpent, its scales glinting like emeralds and gold. Eyes like molten amber fixed on Sinbad, filled with intelligence and fury. Its claws scraped the stone floor, and a hiss like 1,000 whispers filled the cavern. Sinbad's breath caught. He had faced giants, sea serpents, and storms that could tear ships apart, but this was unlike anything he had ever seen. The guardian stepped forward, each movement deliberate, shaking loose coins and artifacts in its path. The sailor knew there was no turning back. He raised the jeweled blade, its light casting eerie patterns on the walls. Every muscle tensed. This was no ordinary fight. It was a battle for life, for treasure, and for the very fate of his journey. The creature lunged with a speed that belied its massive size, and the clash of blade against scale filled the gallery with a sound like thunder striking stone. Sinbad ducked, rolled, and struck again, sparks flying where steel met enchanted scale. The fight had begun, and there would be no mercy in the heart of the island. Sinbad darted among the piles of treasure, the guardian close behind, each strike of its claws sending shards of gold and gems skittering across the floor. The creature's roar echoed like a storm trapped within stone, shaking the very walls of the gallery. Sinbad knew brute strength alone would not save him. He would need wit, cunning, and courage. Spotting a narrow ledge along one side of the chamber, Sinbad leapt, barely evading the swiping claws. He remembered tales from sailors. Ancient guardians often had weaknesses hidden in the environment, traps that could be turned against them. His eyes scanned the cavern. Crystals glimmered along the walls, ropes of vines and chains hung from the ceiling. Piles of treasure shifted with each step of the beast. An idea sparked. Sinbad grabbed a rope from a pile, tossing one end over a stalactite above. As the creature lunged again, he swung across, narrowly avoiding the snapping jaws. Then, with a swift motion, he released the rope, sending it slamming into the guardian's legs. The creature stumbled, tripping over scattered treasure, its roar now a mixture of fury and confusion. Seizing the moment, Sinbad pressed forward, his jeweled blade gleaming. He slashed at the soft joints beneath its scales, finding points of vulnerability exposed during its flailing. The guardian howled, but Sinbad didn't relent. Every strike was calculated, every movement precise. He realized that survival depended not on overpowering the beast, but outsmarting it. With a daring leap, he vaulted over a mound of gold, ducking under the creature's swinging tail, and sprinted toward a narrow side passage leading deeper into the island. Behind him, the guardian roared once more, but Sinbad's mind raced faster than its strikes. He would need every ounce of cunning to survive, and perhaps to claim the treasure that waited in the shadows beyond. Sinbad crept through the narrow passage, his heart still racing from the clash with the guardian. The air grew warmer, scented with a mixture of salt, stone, and something sweetly metallic, treasure. Ahead, the passage widened, revealing a vast chamber, walls lined with gold and precious gems that glittered even in the dim light of his jeweled blade. Stacks of coins formed miniature mountains, silver chalices gleamed with intricate designs, and gemstones of every color sparkled like captured starlight. Rich tapestries depicting long-forgotten kings and battles adorned the walls. It was a sight so breathtaking, Sinbad almost forgot to breathe. But caution gripped him. He knew the guardian could return at any moment, or worse, more traps might be hidden among the treasure. He moved carefully, testing each step on the stone floor. A single misstep could mean a pitfall, a swinging blade, or a hidden snare. As he explored, he noticed something extraordinary, a pedestal in the center of the chamber, upon which rested a chest encrusted with emeralds and rubies. Unlike the other treasures, it radiated a faint golden light, pulsing as if alive. Sinbad approached slowly, every muscle tense. With trembling hands, he lifted the lid, and inside lay a treasure beyond imagination. Golden idols, ancient scrolls inscribed with secrets of the seas, and a collection of jewels that sparkled like captured sunlight. His heart leaped with triumph, but he knew better than to celebrate too soon. The chamber seemed to hum with power, the air thick with the sense that the island itself was alive, watching him, judging him. Sinbad whispered a prayer, carefully selecting a few treasures to carry, knowing that greed could cost him everything. Even in victory, the shadow of danger lingered. He had survived storms, giants, and serpents, but the island still held its secrets, and he had yet to uncover them all. Sinbad carefully packed a small portion of the treasures into his satchel, every sense alert. The chamber, though glittering with gold, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Shadows danced along the walls, stretching and contracting as if breathing. For the first time, he felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched, not by the guardian outside, but by something else. A soft click echoed from the far end of the room. Sinbad froze. Dust shifted, and the faint golden glow from the central chest flared suddenly, blinding him for a moment. When his vision cleared, he saw it, a hidden compartment in the wall, sliding open to reveal a narrow corridor spiraling downward into darkness. Curiosity battled caution, but Sinbad knew that the heart of the island's mystery lay within. With his jeweled sword in hand, he stepped forward, each footfall echoing ominously. The walls of the corridor were carved with strange symbols, shimmering faintly as if alive, and the air was thick with the scent of wet stone and something far older, ancient magic, untouched for centuries. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the chamber. It was not the serpent, nor the lion-serpent hybrid. It was something else, something far older, lurking deep within the island. Sinbad's pulse quickened, his mind racing for a plan. He knew he could not turn back now. The secrets, the treasures, and the unknown challenges ahead demanded courage. He whispered a prayer to God and pressed onward. Every step drew him closer to the ultimate test of his skill, bravery, and wit. The island had one final trial waiting, and only the cleverest sailor could hope to survive it. The shadows shifted again, and Sinbad realized the adventure was far from over. The corridor twisted and turned like a serpent itself, leading Sinbad deeper into the heart of the island. The air grew colder, heavy with the scent of damp stone and hidden danger. Every shadow seemed to twitch, every flicker of light hinting at movement just beyond his vision. At last, he entered a vast chamber, larger than any he had seen. At its center stood a pedestal of black stone, upon which rested a crystalline orb, glowing faintly with a pale, ethereal light. Around it, intricate traps lined the floor, pressure plates, swinging blades, and hidden pits, all designed to punish the unwary. Sinbad's breath caught. He had never encountered such cunning craftsmanship. He stepped carefully, feeling with his feet, using his sword to prod suspicious tiles. With each cautious move, the chamber seemed to react, as if the island itself were testing him. Then, from the shadows, a whisper, soft, almost melodic, yet filled with warning. You who seek the heart of the island, only the brave and wise may claim it. Sinbad's eyes narrowed. This was no ordinary trial. He would have to combine courage, intelligence, and agility to survive. One wrong step, and centuries of secrets would remain buried, perhaps at the cost of his life. He moved with careful precision, dodging traps and leaping over pitfalls. Each step brought him closer to the orb, the air around it shimmering as if alive. The whispers grew louder, echoing through the chamber, yet Sinbad pressed forward, driven by determination, faith, and the thrill of adventure. At last, he reached the pedestal, his hands trembling as he lifted the crystalline orb. Light flooded the chamber, revealing treasures hidden in darkness, maps to unknown lands, and jewels that sparkled with impossible colors. Sinbad had passed the final trial. But even as triumph surged within him, he knew the island still held secrets beyond imagination, and his journey was far from over. Sinbad emerged from the hidden chamber, his satchel heavy with treasures, the jeweled sword gleaming at his side, and the crystalline orb glowing softly in his hands. The island seemed to exhale, the shadows retreating as if acknowledging his victory. He paused, taking a deep breath of the salty, sunlit air. The storm-tossed seas he had survived, the serpent, the giant, the hidden traps, all of it now behind him. The forest around the shore was alive with the cries of exotic birds and the rustle of unseen creatures, but Sinbad's heart was light. He had faced death and emerged victorious, claiming riches beyond imagination. But more importantly, he had proven his courage, his cunning, and his unwavering spirit. Climbing aboard his small boat, he set sail, the waves carrying him gently away from the island's mysteries. The sea, once so threatening, now seemed a friend, guiding him toward distant horizons. The treasures he carried were only a part of his reward. The true prize was the knowledge, the experience, and the stories he would tell. As the island faded from view, Sinbad looked back, whispering a prayer of thanks to God. He knew this voyage had changed him forever. Ahead lay calm seas, distant lands, and the promise of new adventures. And yet, somewhere deep in his heart, he knew the ocean held more mysteries, more dangers, and more wonders. For the sailor who dared the unknown, every journey was only the beginning. Sinbad gripped the oars, a smile on his face, and whispered to the horizon, onward to the next adventure."